WNBA finals, and so I'll leave it there. I mean, I'm just obviously disheartened. I'm a human too. I have a family. I have 2 kids who are devastated by these comments, and so all I'll say is just, it's obviously...
In professional sports, it is said that no individual is ever greater than the league. The commissioner always has a gavel, and the shield always defends itself. But there are exceptions to every rule, and that exception has a name in the WNBA, Caitlin Clark. Over the last year, we have seen a quiet conflict between Caitlin Clark's new wave and the WNBA's old guard. However, that Cold War has suddenly heated up. WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is reportedly furious behind closed doors after significant news about NBC and the future of broadcasting rights. This was more than a commercial transaction. It was an adversarial takeover of the story. The front office is apparently in a panic, realizing they have lost control of their most valuable asset since the dynamics have changed so drastically. There is more to the narrative you're going to hear than simply basketball. It has to do with money, envy, and the heartbreaking realization that the WNBA establishment made a mistake. Instead of humbling a celebrity, they gave her the kingdom's keys. According to reports, Commissioner Cathy Engelbert is blowing up because she has come to terms with a difficult reality. The WNBA is not necessary for Caitlin Clark's survival. She is essential to the WNBA. Additionally, Caitlin Clark now has the ability to demand conditions because of NBC, and the commissioner is unable to stop her. We need to consider the scope of what has transpired with NBC in order to comprehend why the commissioner is allegedly losing her temper. We are aware that the WNBA negotiated a record-breaking 11-year media rights agreement worth over $2.2 billion. This seems to be a victory for Commissioner Cathy Engelbert on paper. She may claim to have rescued the league while standing at the podium. If you appreciate this content, consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. Believe it or not, more than 83% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. It's free and only takes a second, but it means the world to us. So, did you subscribe already? Great. Thank you so much for your support. Now back to the video. However, a different image emerges when you examine the fine print and network behavior more closely. For the WNBA, NBC did not pay that much. They paid that much for the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. There are rumors circulating that Caitlin Clark-focused programming is a key component of NBC's agenda. The WNBA's decades old, everyone is equal marketing approach does not appeal to them. They are aware that the ratings originate from a single individual, and they want those ratings. This has caused a huge split. The commissioner wants to promote the notion that every roster spot is equally valued. On the other hand, NBC is using the league as a star-driven vehicle. The network has essentially circumvented the commissioner's authority by siding so strongly with Caitlin Clark. Cathy Engelbert is unable to demand that NBC stop airing Caitlin Clark. If the statistics do not support it, she cannot urge them to focus on the New York Liberty or the Las Vegas Aces. There was more to the announcement than simply games being aired. It was a message that the networks are now in charge and that number 22 is their chosen queen. However, the commissioner reportedly had a migraine after the NBC contract. We must also discuss the Unrivaled League. This was meant to be the WNBA's major sisterhood moment over the summer. This 3-on-3 league, which was founded by stars Breanna Stewart and Nafisa Collier, was marketed as the best way for elite athletes to earn money and maintain their fitness during the off-season. They needed one thing to make it truly successful. Even if they had the money, the players, and the buzz, they still needed Caitlin Clark. Unrivaled reportedly threw everything at her. We are talking about an offer similar to that of Lionel Messi, a salary of more than $1 million, league equity, and enormous incentives. It was an offer that would have been hard to turn down. Caitlin Clark was probably expected by the commissioner and the league's veterans to follow orders, accept the deal, and elevate her peers' stature. Then the shocking thing happened. Caitlin Clark declined. She declined the opportunity to play with the elite and turned down millions of dollars. The front office felt the blow of this refusal. Why? Because it was a flex. By turning down Unrivaled, Caitlin Clark deprived a new league of the exposure it sorely needed, telling the establishment, I do not need your money, and I do not need your legitimacy. It demonstrated that she is creating her own kingdom outside the clique that has been hostile to her all year. This is a catastrophe for Kathy Engelbert. It demonstrates that Caitlin Clark is unruly and prepared to leave the table, leaving the league as a whole on its own. We must examine Kathy Engelbert's personal reputation, which has suffered greatly, in order to fully comprehend why she is allegedly blowing up. NBC was not the source of the conflict between Caitlin Clark and the commissioner. At first, there was silence. Fans saw Caitlin Clark targeted with hard fouls and unnecessary contact throughout the season, which often resembled hazing more than basketball. The league office remained remarkably silent throughout all. It was believed that Kathy Engelbert was reluctant to defend the young star for fear of upsetting the more experienced players. Then came the interview that changed everything. Kathy Engelbert delivered a corporate, meandering response about rivalries generating viewership. When questioned about the league's toxicity and the growing cloud of fan conflict, she compared the situation to the era of Bird versus Magic. It was a tone-deaf catastrophe. She received criticism from the Women's National Basketball Players Association, WNBA. Caitlin Clark's fans also criticized Kathy Engelbert. Even the media turned against her. She was forced to issue an apology, but it was too late. This leadership failure created a void. Caitlin Clark realized that the person in charge would not protect her. For Kathy Engelbert, the NBC partnership is very risky. Because of this, massive media giants have essentially become Caitlin Clark's new guardian. The commissioner knows she mishandled the situation, which is why she is upset. Instead of taking advantage of the opportunity to support the world's biggest basketball star, she chose to play politics. She is now watching from the sidelines as Caitlin Clark completely surpasses the league in popularity. It is impossible to discuss this NBC story without mentioning the basketball itself. This was the first significant fracture in the foundation. Many viewed the selection committee's decision to leave Caitlin Clark off the Indiana Fever's Olympic pathway for Paris as a gatekeeping effort by veteran players. They wanted to demonstrate that newcomers must wait their turn. Hiding behind the justification of basketball decisions, Kathy Engelbert publicly supported the committee's decision. The narrative intensifies at this point, however. According to reports, NBC, the network that carried the basketball, was enraged. They believed that having Caitlin Clark on the team would have broken the world record for women's basketball viewership. The WNBA establishment lost millions of dollars in potential advertising revenue by excluding her. Let us fast forward to the present. For the WNBA season, NBC is putting even more emphasis on Caitlin Clark because they will not allow the old guard to cost them money once again. The commissioner is aware that the networks are still upset over the basketball mishap. The league is being forced to do what it should have done during the summer through this renewed effort to focus everything on Caitlin Clark. It is almost like retaliation from the media giants. Put the star on the screen. The fact that the commissioner has to oversee a locker room full of players who are allegedly furious with envy only adds to her stress. The NBC revelation validates the fears of many veterans. Caitlin Clark is the league's rising and setting sun. Legends like Sheryl Swoopes and Diana Taurasi have spent months attempting to downplay Caitlin Clark's influence, saying that reality is coming or refusing to give her credit for the league's growth. However, the NBC contract is a reality check. The athletes who have been in the league for 10 years are not worth billions of dollars to the networks. They are investing in the rookie. Kathy Engelbert is in a difficult situation as a result. She must maintain harmony. The powerful players group objects to the notion of one player receiving preferential treatment. However, the commissioner is unable to dispute the economics. She finds herself caught between a disgruntled and irate workforce and NBC, a corporate partner that only cares about the one player those workers reportedly detest. Since it is a pressure cooker, it makes sense that reports claim she is about to blow up in a world where the market has already determined the winner. She is attempting to control the narrative, the internal conflict within the sports media, which casts doubt on the league's authority, is another aspect of this drama. We saw the issue with Hall of Famer and WNBA legend Sheryl Swoopes. She allegedly manipulated statistics, refused to mention Caitlin Clark's name on programs, and made subtle and even overt barbs at her for months. Cheryl Swoops was eventually forced to leave the booth for a planned game due to the intense response. The media's senior authorities made this quite obvious. Do not harm the product. Caitlin Clark is the product. Kathy Engelbert would rather live in a society that honors and protects WNBA icons. However, the networks are demonstrating that they will sever relations with anybody who poses a danger to Golden Goose, even a legend like Cheryl Swoops. Once again, this challenges Kathy Engelbert's authority. Every analyst and pundit receives a message from it. Get off at the stop or board the Caitlin Clark train, because the media partners will no longer put up with the hatred that the league let develop for so long. Kathy Engelbert is losing control of the narrative. Let us put an end to the chatter and discuss the cold, hard money. The commissioner's stress stems from this. In the past, the WNBA has suffered significant financial losses. The NBA provided subsidies for more than 25 years. Then Caitlin Clark showed up. All of a sudden, venues are full. Sales of jerseys have increased by 500%. Because the money is available to sustain them, charter flights are now being authorized. The commissioner is aware of how precarious the WNBA's unexpected solvency is. Nearly all of it is based on the Caitlin Clark effect. The bubble collapses if Caitlin Clark has an injury, decides to take a break, or chooses to play in Europe. There are probably terms and audience expectations in the NBC contract that depend on Caitlin Clark performing. Caitlin Clark has a lot of power. Because of this, the employer has the upper hand in a typical negotiation. In this case, the worker represents the whole economy. The realization that she is no longer in charge is causing Kathy Engelbert to blow up. She looks after a home that Caitlin Clark constructed. The commissioner must listen to Caitlin Clark's request to adjust the timetable, travel plans, or media procedures, since failing to do so would result in financial devastation. However, the media agreement was not the only source of conflict. The timetable itself was the problem. Fans noticed something odd early in the season. The schedule for the Indiana Fever was harsh. More games against the league's hardest clubs in the first month than almost anybody else. Many onlookers thought it was a setup in order for the "she needs to adapt" narrative to resonate. It seemed as if the league was tossing Caitlin Clark into the deep end in the hopes that she would drown. If that was the plan, it was a complete failure. Caitlin Clark persevered through the ordeal and prospered. The scheduling dynamics will probably shift now that NBC is involved. In order to keep Caitlin Clark fresh for national television, networks will require prime-time slots, rest days, and matches that maximize viewership. The network executives will now have to account to the commissioner's office, which determines the schedule. The schedule is no longer a tool that Kathy Engelbert can utilize to maintain league balance. The commissioner's ability to uphold the 144 quality policy will be further undermined by the schedule's focus on a single player. The commissioner is sweating because of another party in this equation, the sponsors. Although companies like Wilson, Nike, and Gatorade are investing heavily in the league, Caitlin Clark is the main focus of their marketing. In particular, Caitlin Clark and Nike have a huge contract that supposedly exceeds her WNBA pay. Because of this strange situation, Caitlin Clark may be more devoted to her sponsors than to the league. Caitlin Clark will miss the unrivaled league if Nike instructs her to do so. She conducts a halftime interview if NBC requests one. The commissioner is gradually coming to the realization that she has less control over her star player than the corporate behemoths. Securing sponsorships for the league is Kathy Engelbert's responsibility. However, the league office seems unnecessary when the sponsors are just interested in the player. The explosion we are hearing about is probably a response to these sponsors going directly to Caitlin Clark's representation instead of Kathy Engelbert. Being left out of the loop in her own sport is embarrassing for a commissioner. We must also discuss the supporters. The Clarkies, the millions of new supporters, are distinct from the WNBA's devoted, albeit tiny, fan base. They are devoted to Caitlin Clark rather than the WNBA. They have publicly denounced the other players, the officials, and the commissioner. Fans are rebelling against Kathy Engelbert. Thousands of comments on social media demand her resignation each time she makes a mistake. These fans feel empowered by the NBC News. It confirms their view that Caitlin Clark is the sole important factor. The commissioner is attempting to avoid upsetting the millions of new fans who foot the bill while also appeasing the legacy fans who detest the shift. The balancing act is unachievable. In essence, the NBC announcement gives the new fans legitimacy. This further distances Kathy Engelbert from the fundamental WNBA culture from which she originated by telling them, "You were correct. She is the star." She is losing both the public's faith and the locker room. How the league responded to the allegations of racism and toxicity was one of the most contentious parts of this story. Instead of addressing the behavior on the court, several members of the media and the league misrepresented the fans' harsh treatment of Caitlin Clark as poisonous. It was a deflection strategy, but that strategy is no longer effective. The league can no longer hide behind specialized storylines because NBC is bringing a broad worldwide audience to the games. There will be 4K cameras and close examination of the comments. Next season, there will be more than simply a Twitter argument if a player takes a cheap shot at Caitlin Clark.